This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
I've been here for a minute, so a few years ago, things not going our way, we probably would have shut down. It was just great to see just that progress in our team, that things could be going bad, but we pulled together. We never got to fussing on the sideline. We more of just came together and encouraged each other. Even KJ was coming down to our side. We was going down to the offensive side, just keeping each other encouraged because we knew how we could play. We knew we didn't play our best.
And Simeon Blair, one of the Arkansas defensive captains now, and I can appreciate the idea of never thinking that you're down and out. I'm not sure if I viewed Saturday as progress, but a win is a win, and that's for certain. We got Connor O'Gara with us here on Halftime from Saturday Down South. Connor, I agree with Simeon there that in previous iterations of Arkansas football, not last year, maybe not the year before, but certainly the 2 years before that, doesn't matter the opponent necessarily. That Arkansas might have at some points given up in a game like that where they're down 17 in the first half. They didn't give up, obviously. They came back and won. So, yeah, that was enough, right? Was a win over Missouri State enough for you?
I think a couple things can be true at the same time. I think one is that obviously you'd rather come out of there with a win than a loss, and you love seeing a team that actually has an identity to turn to in those spots. And to be able to have the quick strike ability, the combination of Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson is quickly becoming one of the best 1-2 punches, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football. That's all well and good. The problem is more so what Missouri State exposed, and that's that this pass defense is a train wreck right now without Jalen Catalon. It's bad. I mean, they're last right now in the country. They are dead last. They've had 3 consecutive games in which they've allowed 300 passing yards, and not necessarily to world beater quarterbacks. And that's the issue that you have moving forward is, all right, well, you're going to see a lot of really good quarterbacks in the SEC, and you're going to see guys that can take the top off the defense. Maybe not this weekend. Maybe they won't see that against A&M, though I do think that's why the Aggies are favored in that one. As much as I said in the preseason, I think Arkansas is the better football team, and that's proven true so far. I think you look at that weakness and you scratch your head and go, man, if this group doesn't get home with Drew Sanders and those edge rushers and the way that they've been able to pressure the passer, it's kind of bad news bears, and that's the issue facing this Arkansas team.
You know, you look at the remainder of the schedule, too, here, Connor, for Arkansas. You get Alabama, of course, and, I mean, Bryce Young speaks for himself. Will Rogers and Mississippi State after that. They had a lot of trouble against LSU with that air raid, and maybe that has more to do with the LSU defense. Auburn, a mess when it comes quarterback play. I think BYU's got a decent quarterback. Ole Miss, by then, maybe they settle on exactly who it is it's going to be, and then Mizzou. So, your point is well taken, playing in the SEC, but still, you're not playing against teams that necessarily have had, like, the best quarterback play. And this weekend against A&M, it's like, take your pick. If it's Haynes King or if it's Max Johnson, it hasn't mattered for the Aggies in either of these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think some of those quarterbacks are better than they're getting credit for. Jaron Hall, BYU quarterback, he's a stud. He's really, really good. They just beat Baylor. That Dave Aranda defense over the weekend, they've gotten off to that was the weekend before they lost to Oregon this past weekend. But I still think that's a really solid quarterback situation that's an experienced offense. The issue is I don't know that Miles Slusher automatically fixes that. Right? I know that they're expected to be able to get him back, but I don't know that you can snap your fingers and expect them to be all right on the back end. I mean, it's been bad. It's been really bad. But the good news is that your offense, as long as it holds the way that it is right now with those guys staying healthy, is darn good and darn tough to stop. And I think there are a lot of teams that you look at on that schedule that you'd say, man, Arkansas should be able to win that battle up front. And maybe they're going to run into a few of these teams that really can't stretch the field at all, and they won't necessarily be exposed. But nobody would have expected Missouri State to be able to stretch the field. And they're guys running in big open space. That always kind of makes me nervous. And it made me nervous watching LSU back in 2020 when they had these elite defensive backs. I'm like, why are these guys running in massive open spaces? Because that's not just a matter of not having dudes. It's being out of position. It's scheme. And I wonder if there is a little bit of that with Arkansas. But they definitely know where their weaknesses are, and they know where their strengths are, which is not a bad place to be heading into late September.
Well, so a strength for Arkansas certainly is stopping the run, getting to the quarterback. on the defensive side. On the offensive side, we know they can run the football. We saw the passing attack open up a little bit this past weekend against Missouri State. But, this next game against A&M, you got an Aggies defense that is playing really well. I mean, they're playing very well, not up to the level of the offense. And you got an Arkansas team where offensively they're doing really well. And defensively, like I'd never seen something quite like this before. They're total boom or bust. They got playmakers, guys that get to the quarterback, create turnovers, force fumbles, but give up a ton of big plays.
Yeah, what's the opposite of bend but don't break? It's like, that's kind of what it feels like at this point. And I think A&M, and I've watched A&M pretty closely so far to start off the year. You're encouraged by what you've seen from them defensively with DJ Durkin. I still think up front, Arkansas should have an advantage. They really should. And I know they have all-world talent in terms of all those 5-star defensive linemen that they signed in this historic recruiting class. But Arkansas's got grown men up front. And I think they should be able to win that battle and play the kind of offense that they want. The question is, how does the first half maybe dictate the way that the rest of this game goes, right? Like, if A&M has that defense out there and they can't get off the field because Arkansas is being able to get those defensive stops early on, then how much does that kind of wear on their defense? Because that's why A&M couldn't even get possessions in that game against App State. And that's why they were held to 9 first downs. Max Johnson's going to be the starter, but I do think that they didn't necessarily all of a sudden answer their questions offensively. But that's the good news for Arkansas. I mean, something's got to give, I would think. The weakness of this Arkansas secondary combined with the weakness of this A&M passing game, something has to probably give. But this is still a position I think Arkansas fans should feel decent about, and they shouldn't feel like all of a sudden A&M, just because it beat Miami, should be this overwhelming favorite to go into Arlington and win that game.
Connor, now one thing that's not lacking with Arkansas, it's the production from Rocket Sanders. 3 straight games to start the season with over 100 rushing yards in each of 3 and getting more and more week after week. It's been floated around a lot on social media. Heck, you even look at some Vegas odds. His Heisman odds are going up and becoming more favorable for him. I'm not saying that he's gonna move into a top 5, but if he continues to this 100-yard plus streak and adds a few 200 in there, could he be a legitimate Heisman candidate here in a couple weeks?
Probably not. And look, I love Rocket Sanders. I said last week in the middle of that game that I'll start the Rocket Sanders for first-team All-SEC campaign right now. I'm okay with that, with the style that he runs with. But to be a tailback to win in this day and age in the way that teams throw the football, I mean, you look back on the last time where it felt like, okay, this was all about the running backs, and it was 2015, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. And those two teams, I mean, Stanford was like the first or the second team out of the spot for the college football playoff. That was a really good team, and McCaffrey put up insane all-purpose numbers as well. And Derrick Henry, the volume that he got down the stretch was just insane for an Alabama team that obviously went on to win the national championship. So I'd say probably you're not getting to that place with Rocket Sanders. I don't think he's going to be in that conversation necessarily, but he's having a phenomenal year. And if there are people that are still sleeping on him and who he is, they need to wake up, because what he's doing at that size and that offense, really, really fun to watch, and it's going to be difficult for teams to prepare for.
Well, outside of Arkansas and A&M, I think probably the best game in the SEC this coming week is going to be the one that College Game Day is going to be at in Knoxville, Tennessee and Florida. Does Billy Napier have a chance to pull off 2 top 25 wins in one season here in 4 weeks?
He's got a chance. He's got a chance because I think as much as this Florida team has been frustrating, I do think what they have established in this roller coaster start is that they can run the football. They actually have a really nice ground game, and they have an offensive line that's doing things that they haven't done in a while. And I love their 1-2 punch they have in the backfield with Montrell Johnson, the Louisiana transfer, and then the true freshman Trevor Etienne, the brother of Travis Etienne. They look really good in that way, and Naquan Wright as well. And then, oh, by the way, Anthony Richardson, when he gets in space, you know what he can do with his legs. Of course, Florida looks one-dimensional right now. They can't throw the football. Anthony Richardson doesn't have a passing touchdown yet. But the path to victory for them is to be able to establish the run against a Tennessee team that hasn't run into a team that can necessarily control the clock the way that Florida could with its ground Tennessee doesn't play complementary football. They were last in the country last year in time of possession. That's the MO with Josh Heupel and this offense. As great as it is to watch it when it's humming, they get their defense pretty worn out. So can Florida kind of wear down this Tennessee defense and maybe stay on the field just long enough to be able to take over down the stretch? That's the path. I still believe that Tennessee is going to be able to win this game because I don't really trust that Florida offense, once it falls behind. But I do think that there is at least a path there, despite what that number, I think it's at 9.5 would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
So Auburn's got Mizzou this Saturday at home. Maybe the last chance to win a game for Brian Harsin, right? I mean, the schedule after that gets incredibly difficult, and it's not like they set the world on fire before getting blown out by Penn State. The clock has started. I mean, the clock had started a while back with Brian Harsin, and now it just sped up, didn't it?
I hate talking about a must-win game in September with a year two head coach, but that's where we're at. And look, I wasn't one of those people that was saying, "Oh, fire him" immediately after what we saw over the weekend against Penn State, because while I did not expect the results to be that lopsided, a lot of the things that we saw with the way that it played out and Auburn's shortcomings weren't a surprise. And if you were skeptical about this team in the preseason, you saw a lot of those issues with the protection, the fact that TJ Finley is a pretty statuesque quarterback who waits in the pocket a little bit too long, and he has turnovers. And this defense, the defensive line depth isn't necessarily there. They can't get off the field. They can't get off blocks. And Penn State took over that football game. If they lose to Mizzou, a team that has had no offensive identity whatsoever against quality competition so far, we will be talking about who the next Auburn coach should be, and we'll be talking about whether or not it should be Deion Sanders or Lane Kiffin. I mean, that will be the conversation next Monday with the way that things are heading and with the angst that you feel as a fan base, as an administration, when you watch your entire stadium of a 3:30 CBS game filter out in the closing minutes of a 41-12 beatdown. It's a tough pill to swallow, and it'd be even tougher to swallow if they lost to Mizzou next week.
What last thing? What am I supposed to make of Mississippi State? Going the last quarter and a half without scoring, and 1 4th down on their last 4 drives, and less than 290 points. Maybe LSU is a good defensive team, but I mean, Mississippi State had things going for a while there, and it just kind of stopped on a dime. What happened?
Mississippi State's a good football team. They are. And for 3 quarters of that game, I was telling myself, everybody was sleeping on them. They shouldn't have been doing this. And then once Austin Williams muffed that punt, it was all downhill from there. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad the way that they collapsed. They couldn't get those adjustments on 3rd down after they were LSU was 0 for 8 on 3rd down to start off the game. And Jaden Daniels all of a sudden just found that 8-yard out with Malik Neighbors and just picked them apart with it. But I think that Mississippi State moving forward, they're going to be a tough team to prepare for just because of how different their offense and their defense is with what they do schematically. But they have some weaknesses, and most notably, their offensive tackles can be beat. They just can. And in post-Charles Cross world, after he was, a top 10 pick for the Seahawks, they have issues protecting the quarterback. And if you have an edge rusher like Ojulari, which, look, Arkansas has that edge rusher in Drew Sanders, you can get to the Mississippi State quarterback. And that right now is the biggest issue facing this team. As much as we talk about, with Arkansas, we know what their weakness is. We know what the weakness is for this Mississippi State team, and it's their play at offensive tackle, which is pretty important if you're going to throw the ball 50 times a game.
BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, contests, and events with first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV 50. Bet online, where the game starts.